we're off to the races.
It's the Wretched Radio Mail Call Delivery Bag Q&A Infotainment Nationwide Extravaganza, featuring your voicemails, correspondences, communiques, dispatches, memorandums, and missives.
Any special message for all the kids watching at home?
What we need right now is a clear message to the people of this country.
You have 1,200 messages.
That is a bit above average.
Now here's your host, Todd, freakishly tall Friel.
The mail is here!
Woo. Todd the Soldier Friel. This is Wretched Radio. Don't worry, I'm going to be fine. I'll soldier through this. I can make it through today's Wretched Radio. My little earbud thing fell out. I got to shove it into my ear, and it doesn't even hurt a little, but it's just a bit of a nuisance. But don't worry, in the 21st century, that's probably about the biggest lament that some people have in a day. My earbud thing got lost.
I will contact the publisher, see if we can get you tacked on to the end of Fox's Book of Martyrs.
Well, you know what? It's funny that you bring up Fox's Book of Martyrs, Joseph. George Marsh hangs on my wall. Well, not George himself, but the page from Fox's Book of Martyrs. He was burned to death. He was set on fire as one of the Marian martyrs. That is a field of study. I think next year we're actually going to dedicate our Reformation Week to the Marian martyrs. Steve Lawson has done a ton of work on that, and he is a great student of the Marian martyrs, and he's quite passionate in preaching about it. We'll share a lot of that. It's worth studying. I was just looking at George Marsh on the wall, and it's people died, and there's nothing different in the DNA of the people who murdered 285 Marian martyrs in the cruelest, vilest ways possible. Have we really been somehow progressed that much more where we don't have that capacity? Of course not. And I fear it could be coming our way. First Peter would be your book of choice if you want to get ready for the winds of persecution that are blowing like the Santa Ana winds. Let's get to the mailbag, shall we? There's two ways to get a hold of us here at Wretched. Idea@wretched.org, idea@wretched.org, or you can beep talk 1-877-282-BEEP. Todd, this is a good question, writes Joe. Can you direct me to any resources, written or wretched, that can help us understand how to discipline a 7 to 12-year-old that have unfortunately gone through any type of trauma, abuse earlier in their life? I am really glad you're asking the question, Joe, because this is a tough one. I think that Joe and his wife are fostering kids. They're maybe thinking about adopting kids. And they want to be biblical. They want to discipline the kids. But here's the problem. When a kid is traumatized, we think, and rightly so, that if we spank a child, the child is going to separate from us. And that is indeed a consideration. Remember, traumatized kids, whether you want to call it RAD or not, reactive attachment disorder, there's also failure to thrive. These post-traumatic, I think they're calling it like infantile post-traumatic stress disorder. Kids who were put up for adoption, they were in foster homes, they were mistreated and abused, they were traumatized as a child, and they don't trust adults. They don't bond to adults because they fear if they do that, then those people can break their heart the way that it was shattered into a million pieces when they were in a crib. That is the core of the issue, that a child who has been abused is hoping, longing, wanting mommy and daddy to answer their cries, to hold and to snuggle and to console and to soothe and to feed and to change. They're longing, longing, longing for it. It doesn't happen. And they are absolutely devastated. Now, innately, they think, if I desire that type of relationship again, I'm going to experience the same pain again. They cannot articulate this. When you ask one of these kids who has RAD, what do you think? I don't know. And they don't. Why do you do that? I don't know. And they don't. They don't know. They can't articulate it. Maybe years later they can. There is hope. I saw the story again of a young lady. She was wicked awful. Woo! If I recall the details, she was a foster kid, and this girl was just flat out. Today she's a nurse, and she's trying to help our AD kids. There's hope, but it is very difficult because of the bonding issue. They profoundly fear that if I desire to be loved again, consider the implications for that. If I desire to be loved again, I'm going to feel that pain again. So the last thing I'm going to do is desire to be loved. So what does this child do? They seek to do everything to separate themselves from their new adopted parents, their foster parents. And they will destruct, they will disrupt, they will do anything necessary to push them away. They do not want that parenting bond because they're horrified of it. Enter the Christian parent. They want to be biblical and do what the Bible says without caveats. There are no caveats in the Bible. That corporal punishment is, I should say corporal discipline is a more precise word, is biblical. And it's replete throughout the Proverbs, and there's no caveat that says, unless, of course, this. So you have the challenge, Joe, or you, if you have adopted or foster a child, to rightly initiate corporal discipline. Now, there are some things to be remembered here when you're dealing with the adopted kid or the foster kid. If you spank them, they are like, oh, good, I'm safe from them. Why would they get that impression? Is it because of the paddle, or is it because of the paddler? And I would suggest to you it's the latter. If you're not applying discipline, which is discipleship, lovingly, calmly, rightly, and never in anger, they aren't going to get that sense that you're being cruel to them and that they are successfully disrupting the potential bond between the two of you. They won't get that if you're doing it rightly. So the only advice that I'm aware of, I haven't seen anybody that's written anything on this. I suspect I might be. Maybe I've got a bunch of stuff in the queue, but I would like to get to this someday. I'm not aware of anything that is out there that deals with this issue in any helpful sort of way, in enduring and understanding it. So I can't recommend anything, but I recommend this. Set up the rules for your corporal discipline. Explain it to your foster or adopted children lovingly. Here's why we're doing this. Here are the lines. Don't let them be arbitrary. One day it's this, the next day it's that. Stick to your own rules. Explain it to them in advance, and then carrying it out when you are calm and not furious. If you do it in anger, if you don't do it lovingly, then you are indeed giving the child exactly what they're looking for, and that is separation from you. But if you love on them, hold them, hug them, maybe cry with them, although a lot of our AD kids won't cry. They don't feel the pain sometimes. But if you are sensitive and loving in that instance, then you got to do what the Bible says you got to do. Just follow the rules. And by the way, quite honestly, those rules apply even if your child isn't adopted. That's just the way you've got to do it. You've got to do it that way. Now, there's some people who've got even more unique challenges. If you've got a child who has special needs, well, now what do? Well, it needs to be communicated at that level where they can understand it. But even then, some sort of corporal discipline should be happening. Please keep in mind, for some kids, it's more than others. And I do believe, and this is a careful biblical counseling consideration, sometimes we can look at a situation and consider extenuating circumstances to potentially moderate our response. For instance, your child is very, very, very sensitive and gets very distraught and sometimes angry if they see violent things. Okay? So your kid comes home from school and he's being really naughty. What's up, son? Well, it turns out that during the day in one of their classes, as far too many teachers do these days, they show them movies. So they showed the kid Saving Private Ryan, and it agitated him. Now he comes home and he's sinning all over the place because of it. What do you do? Well, it depends on what your rules are in advance, but the sin is still his, and yet you go, but I understand why, and it can moderate your response to that. And the same thing is true with a special needs child. You can moderate your response because it could be their organic problem and challenge that is causing that. Nevertheless, they're still responsible for it. So moderate, think about the correct response, do it lovingly without yelling, no matter what sort of child you have. Doesn't matter, IQ or otherwise, behavioral issue or otherwise. Be super loving about it. And remember, some of them, it doesn't take much. It could just be a scowl, frankly, that wilts them. And apply it biblically and lovingly, because it is commanded and it is a part, not of discipline per se, but discipleship. You don't do your kid a favor when you never do that. This is Wretched Radio.